Okay, so today I'm going to be playing Stalwart Extended Edition, or Stalwart XT, which is a Black Mesa mod that was created by JamaicanDave and myself throughout the month of August of 2019. Stalwart was initially a map created in 2016 as a Hardville entry, or an unofficial Hardville entry that was made by JamaicanDave, and he asked me at the end of July 2019 to help build upon what was already there and turn it into something bigger. So we've extended it, added more content, and now I'll play through it and talk about some of the design decisions. I won't be speaking on behalf of Dave, because only he knows why he made his design decisions, but I'll kind of just be commenting on some stuff, and the stuff that I made I can definitely, comment on and say a lot more about. So here we go, Stalwart Extended Edition. And instantly, and this is something that we'll be coming back to and exploring throughout the mod, is the fight between the Vortigaunts and the HECU. There's a few encounters that crop up with stuff like this, and this kind of sets the scene for it. So you can't see them. Well, I don't think you can, not really. But you can see kind of their weapons and the bullets and whatnot. So you know that they're there, and it kind of tells you as the player that you'll be encountering them, basically. And it's always best to start off with fairly easy enemies and not throw the player into the deep end. You don't want to be overwhelming the player immediately. I mean, there is a time and a place to overwhelm the player, but not with instant combat. So having, you see quite a lot running away sequences, or sequences where you've got to, as I was referring to there, run, but not necessarily have to fire back, is something that's been done quite a bit. And it's good just to add in interesting things like these falling rocks. I'm not sure if they were 100% to serve a purpose, but it kind of just creates kind of a level of interest when the player rounds the corner. And it is like the route you're going in. So it's also very good to include these places, these side areas that don't actually lead anywhere. You simply go and search, and in that scenario you get rewarded for what for your search. You can get some battery power. So coming into this room, if you actually look up, you can see some soldiers, which I only noticed quite recently. Maybe they were added quite recently, I'm not sure, but it's just something for keen-eyed players to see as they round the corner here. And this room has caused a lot of people to get stuck, which is understandable. It's parkour, which is not everyone's favourite mechanic. The thing I find quite cool is that this kind of tells a funny story, or not a funny story. That's probably not that funny. But he's tried to climb the ladder and it's broken on him, and yeah. But it's just a good bit of environmental storytelling, and because it's red, it's kind of very clear, so the player can kind of come up here and get the impression that there's something up there. That's the area that they're trying to get to. So the first thing is that this area is not that clear, and yeah, I guess kind of having the yellow hazard things on may help. But yes, parkour is hit or miss. But it's one of these things, it's a good challenge to try, and most people will be able to do it. I mean, these things are actually bigger than they seem, so there's like clip brushes to help anyone, so it's not too difficult. It may seem harder than it is, but some people do like parkour. And then we get our first gun, which I won't be using. I'll just use the crowbar, but it's very well signposted with this torch. So instead of just having it lying, because sometimes, I mean, I've probably fallen into this trap hundreds of times, probably even in this mod itself, where you just put a weapon in a weird place and don't signal that it's there, and players often miss. the weapons. So that's something I am not good at. It's something I'm hopefully getting better at, or hopefully going to get better at. And then we've got this guy who is not the easiest guy to fight. I always try and take up a position either behind there or over here. Actually, it's quite easy over here, even though you're closer. You can actually just do that, which is a kind of an exploit, but you know, it's gets the job done. I'll just pick up the ammo, which is, you know, very clearly marked there. So this is the middle room we can see into, kind of the main room. This was the original Stalwart that Dave made back in 2016, and this is the focal point for the entire map. So we're going to be able to see into this room on at least 4 occasions before we actually enter this room. So we can see that the HECU have control of it. They are currently the ones in control. That will soon change. I will speak more about that later. This is a good thing to do. When you go into a room, a lot of the time people will just place enemies and they'll be facing you, they'll be ready to fight. In this instance, what Dave has done is he has put Vortigaunt, and he's looking at the HECU guy, and that's it. So we're not supposed to know what he's doing. It doesn't really matter what he's doing, but the matter is, the fact is that we as a player can choose when to initiate combat, so we can try and sneak around. It's not as if we can do this whole thing stealth. We can't, but it gives us the option. So if we had a grenade, which we don't, or if we had any other weapons in any scenario, if you're making any map, having a scenario like this is good. So you get to initiate the combat. Now he's going to drop quite easily. But what we didn't know is there is in fact another guy. And this guy kind of reacted to the fact that we took on that guy. I guess they'll maybe be on a squad or something. So even though you initiated combat with that one Vortigaunt, the fact is it has repercussions, and obviously you'll have to fight a lot more. And it's the same here as well. We can actually outright see into this room, and we can see this guy's working out how to use a console, and this guy's probably doing the same thing. And these guys actually attack, but you can see them. So yeah, as soon as you kind of round the corner, they will attack. I'm not a very good shot. If you've seen my videos before, I've not actually got any better. And I think I'm on like normal difficulty. Yeah, normal. Just because I don't want to be like spending a long time trying to fight. So now we've got a set sequence, which is, it kind of subverts expectations. So you expect to just run forward, run up that ramp, and then along there. That's what you're expecting as the player. You don't expect anything like that to happen. And what this also does is it creates a barrier. So now we cannot get through. We will lose health. I will just demonstrate that now. We, in fact, will die. So there we go. I expected time to be able to get back out, but obviously I probably went too far in. So it's created this barrier where we can't get past, and it's created an interesting sequence and also a puzzle. You know, in the loosest sense it's a puzzle, but it is a puzzle nonetheless. So we have to find some way to turn it off. And it just involves a little bit of backtracking. And we've got the red light to kind of draw the player's attention, and also the noise. So there's 2 signifiers that show that it's here. And all we have to do is do that, the light goes off and the sound goes off. So we know that we have done it, because obviously we're not facing that direction when we're turning it off. So it's good to have things, other ways of showing that you have achieved your goal rather than just the thing happening, if you know what I mean. This guy can be quite a pain. There we go. And if we could have tried that door, obviously the button was red, so most players will know that that means you cannot open it. But then it's kind of like, well, that clearly shows that we have to find another way around, and that is this kind of area here. It's fully downtime at the moment, so there's no fighting. But again, we come to this point of interest where it's like, that could have just been an empty room and we could have just walked past, but instead Dave's put this zombie knocking on the window, and we've got some other stuff happening back there, and we can actually see some goodies that we can go and retrieve later. But instead of just a boring room, it's created something interesting to see. So this is the second time we see into the middle room. We can see now that there's a conflict going on. Again, as I mentioned at the start, this is the constant battle between the soldiers and the Vortigaunts. I think this is just, it plays out as the AI wants it to. So obviously the Vortigaunts have wrecked. I think it's probably favoured in the Vortigaunts' favour, I guess, as we'll see later. But that's the second time we can see into that room, and things have changed. So it's still the focal point. We'll just quickly go in here and stop this guy from being annoying. I'll just use the crowbar on these guys because I don't want to waste any precious ammo. And we got the shotgun back there, where the Glock used to be in the original Stalwart. Okay, so there we go, an interesting tremor where these rocks fell from, I guess, the ceiling. Just, I guess that was just as a point of interest. It does make it a lot better than just walking into a room and nothing happening. And we can see here that the water is in fact electrocuted, and we can take on this puzzle. I'll quickly go in here. In this mod, we have used hound eyes as kind of side enemies. So I think there's only 4 hound eyes in the entire thing. And both of them are inside rooms that you don't need to go into. So instead of just walking in and picking up the grenade and the ammo, you've got to deal with them first. So there's a time and a place for having NPCs in the way, and that's just one of these times. So now we've got to kind of map a route around. So we'll get rid of this guy. We don't have to, but if we get over there and he's still there, he will cause some issues. Now, I'm going to completely fail this jump. No, I'm not actually. I'm not a good jumper, but there we go. And there's plenty of things that we can get on. Now, this technically doesn't count, but at the same time, I guess it does. This is the third time, so we can actually see the door we were at. We've come in a full circle. Not a full circle, rather. We've come in a, half circle. And we can see into this room. Now, there's nothing interesting happening here because most players will not jump over to this side. But it's just something, if you want to do it, you can. Jumping back is not going to be easy. But there we go. I've just demonstrated that the water is, in fact, electrified. And this bit, it's fairly easy. It looks more difficult than it actually is. So we've got a corridor with this door that doesn't open, but we'll see why in a minute. Or we'll see what happens. And this ambush begins where all these zombies run out. So I'm going to lock them in and just completely abuse the fact there's a door there and fight them in here, because that's just how I want to fight them. You don't have to, in fact. I guess most people will backtrack. That was the first time I backtracked, basically, back onto here. But after this point, there isn't many zombies. So this is kind of the last batch of lots of zombies. There is some more later on that I added in, but that, they're not. It's not too much. And we can actually see a cool set sequence here, where one disappears and then he disappears. Just something, again, this is the fourth and final time we can see into this room, and we can already see the end goal of the map. We can see the elevator. It's got a green button. Most people associate that with you can push the button, and people can put two and two together and realise that we're going to go into an elevator. Let me just push this. And you can utilise this crate to your advantage. In fact, I think originally their, attacks could actually affect the crate, so it would go like flying. At least it did once. It was quite hilarious, but thankfully they can't anymore, so you can actually take cover behind the crate. And we get to this vent, which I'm going to try and jump in. There we go. I'll now talk about use of space. So when this map, and this is just speculation, but it's, you'll see why, but when this map was made, it was an unofficial Hardville entry that Dave made, and I'm not sure how, it probably didn't take that long to make. So what he's done, he's got the most gameplay out of one area by reusing areas, and that's what he's done here. So we've already come into the room here, we've gone across the water and gone into the the corridor into the vent, and now we're back in this area again and we're using it. And this is what you need to do when you're making something like the original Stalwart, where you're making use of space. I think there is other stuff you can find here. Again, this was all here originally. In Stalwart. I'll just grab that for the upcoming battle. And now we eventually get into the room itself, the one that's been the focal point, in the middle of the map. We fall into the crate, which breaks, just to make it more interesting. And here we are. So, as the player, we get to decide when to start this battle, although we do not know that a battle will take place. Some players will guess. Some players will have played the original Stalwart. But, yes, so we'll just begin the battle, and I'll try and talk and fight, which is difficult for me. But it doesn't start immediately. It doesn't start spawning enemies, which I think in the final battle of the entire mod, the enemies spawn very, very quickly. So it's not necessarily the best. But this one does it well in the sense that it gives you a while and you're waiting, and then they start spawning. And at the start, it's not too demanding. I'll just reload. Again, I think they're on like counters, so once you kill 2 of them, or 3 of them, then more will spawn. Which sometimes, if for instance one accidentally didn't spawn, it would stop progress, which is why in the past I've always been very hesitant about using it. But it seems to work well. Dave did a good job at ensuring everything happened when it was supposed to happen. And then, I think this wave, I'm speculating here, I'm not sure if this was the intention, but it's slightly longer, I guess, to give you time to stock up, basically. And we hear very clearly, we heard that soundbite where, just in case, the player didn't see, the soldiers up there, we can... You see, this is what I was saying about not being able to talk and fight. What was I saying? Yeah, just in case the player couldn't see up there, they could still hear the soundbite and know that the soldiers were there. And then because we've taken out all the enemies, the lift opens. Although it's as if like the lift was coming down, you know. So we'll get in the elevator once I've kind of milked this area for all of its supplies. I don't think there's anything else. So we'll get in. Okay, so we're going into a completely new area. All of this area was built kind of between, well, in August of 2019 basically. And yeah, we'll get started. Adding these NPCs kind of gives this area character. You know, you open the doors, there's a scientist, a guard, a vertigon. It's like, well, what happened here? I don't know what happened here. You kind of just place them and it's a bit mysterious. And you've especially got this guy, you know, this camera looking at you, which I was wanting to follow the player around, but I couldn't quite get that working. It wasn't very high on my priority, but it's just to make it slightly more creepy, if you know what I mean. And we come to the main premise of this map, and I'll let it play out first, and then I'll talk over it. Okay, so we saw an interaction between these guards and these captives who are in a shipping cage, similar to the crate, but they've been taken hostage by the HECU. That's what we were trying to get across, and Dave had the idea that to show that that's exactly what happened, these soldiers should have a conversation, and also the doors, you know, Dave suggested to close the doors so that you couldn't just shoot them immediately as you come around the corner, and you can still hear them, see them, you can wait behind the doors, and opening the doors doesn't trigger them. The only thing that triggers them is if you try and attack them, or if you walk over a line here. So let's try and fight them. This could go bad. Yep, it went bad. Okay, there we go. And then they shout help. So coming into this room, I specifically put the cage directly in front of the player, between these two pillars, so the player could see exactly what their goal is. Because a lot of the time, for instance, in some maps you get text at the start that says, you know, like, you must start up the generator, but you can't see a generator. You're like, oh, what's going on? What generator? So I could have easily put the text, you know, in game text, like, rescue the hostages. But instead, I can just show, and especially when Dave suggested to put the conversation in it, it just makes so much more sense what's going on. So it's created this goal that the player must work towards. And I also put these crates here so the player moves round that way as opposed to run straight towards the exit of the room, which is down there. And you know, you can find stuff there. So I did deliberately force the player, or most players, either down or over to this side. Now there's not very much to this side of the room. In fact, when I first blocked out this room, it was so much bigger, and I kind of scaled it back because I knew detailing could be difficult with stuff like that. I put crates in similar to the the one I made up there because I wanted these crates to feel like actual containers instead of just being made to hold hostages and that. And you know, it's like, I don't think the HECU took many hostages, but it's just kind of a fun little storyline, if you will. So yeah, a lot of this room is just dead space. Dead space. I did add in items in these item crates. I don't think many people appreciated that, so I made sure to put other items around the place. Now we come to the second lot of hound eyes. These guys will not attack unless I walk straight into the door or attack them. I find hound eyes very annoying. These guys comment. I could have made them completely silent, but you know, it's like, it makes it more funny if they're commenting on what you're doing around this area. And you can pick up the gun, which isn't very well signalled, but it's one of these things, for players who go out their way, they get rewarded. And you can go right round in this room. Okay, so after the player has looked around this area, they can come to this door, which you can crouch under. I tried to make it as clear as possible, and as soon as you walk kind of into this area, you can hear the Vox talking and combat sounds, and this is just a precursor to the combat sounds of the people fighting, so as soon as we crouch under, the combat will begin. Okay, and as you saw there, you could see the crates moving, basically. I don't know if I showed that very well, but this shows you that the crates can move. It teaches the player that these crates are active, they can actively move about. It's not a mechanic as such, it's just something, and it blocks the bridge, which sometimes when they're fighting can obstruct them, so it shows that, you know, you can't get past this crate, and that's for later on, because this main warehouse, we're going to be in it at least 3 times, possibly 4, technically 4, but we're going to be in it 3 times. We're going to be coming out different areas, doing different things, and it's, again, this comes back to making good use of space, because this was a short project. It wasn't supposed to be huge, and I had to contain as much gameplay in the one area, so that's how I designed it. So that battle was just, again, having the HECU and the Vorts fighting, and it kind of shows you the basic premise of the room. So coming into the room, I didn't want players running straight down here. That area was after the battle had happened, so I can't like block it off literally or put a gate there. I could have, but I didn't want to, because we had like opening a door puzzle later on, so I just decided to put a crate right there, and most players will not now run straight forward. They will appreciate their surroundings, if you know what I mean, and that's why this forklift is here. I just made it so that the player wouldn't just run straight forward. I kind of want the player to go in here, so I've kind of left this area open so you can, you don't need to jump on here, you can just run straight up it. And this provides a lot of cover, so these guys, both parties don't attack unless they've barely got anyone left, and then maybe if the Vorts have more Vorts, they'll start firing on you, as happened in that scenario. But yeah, I kind of want the player to be able to come across here. But I also placed these health charges, which you can't see instantly when you come through the door. So you kind of have to look for it, or find it not that easily. It just makes it more interesting. And in these doors, I placed this weapon here in hopes that players would realise you can go, or you'll be able to go around there, but I guess I could have just placed it there as something to see. But the rule is if you can see something that the player could usually pick up, the player should probably be able to pick it up. So that was kind of my thinking behind it. So yeah, if the fight was still happening, we could use this area to hide from the Vorts, or we could use this area to fight from the Marines, or sometimes the Vortigaunts make it across the bridge and, you know, making fire on you there. So now we're going down into this area. This area is kind of a dead area. There's nothing that's happening here. I tried to make it look like a battle had already taken place down here. I put all of these corpses here. And I just made it look like the military had rolled in, parked their vans and unpacked. And that brings us to this next puzzle where we've got the roll-up door, which will not open, and I very clearly put a wire there so the player can follow the wire and see in this room that you can't access that there is a power generator. Now, would this be a thing in real life? No, it wouldn't. You wouldn't have like wires running straight to one button to a power box. It's like, that's ridiculous. But because this is a video game, it doesn't matter. It's a fun puzzle. People like to work out. They have a look. They think, oh, you know, we need to get in there. The door won't work, so we have to find a way to get the door open. And obviously, I've tried to make the most, you know, something that the players will see instantly, which is this guy hanging through. I placed the gun here to give the player a few clues, I guess, and the player can look in here and, you know, shoot the pallet, which was allegedly holding the door shut. Who put it there? I don't know. It's just there as, you know, as part of the gameplay. So I kind of had put a spark and a sound just to show it had, you know, changed, and then obviously the button colour changes. So to ensure that there wasn't absolutely no combat in this area, I put this guy in. I initially had two, but that was very overpowering. Or I got the impression it would be, you know, having two of them, and because you're stuck in this small area, you know, you've got a few places to hide, but these guys can go up there and cause quite a lot of problems. So I just had the one, but just to kind of feed the player more combat, because there isn't that much combat for the next wee while. There is a bit, and I'll talk about it. On a side note, I detailed this room quite early on, and I detailed it in the style of the main room of the first map. That was, you know, the one that Dave made back in 2016, or the part that he made where the final battle of that map takes place. This room is just kind of a rip-off of it, basically, to keep the style of Stalwart. Don't know what's going on with the reflections there, but sometimes I like to go overboard with detailing and break up the roof, break up the floor. And then walking in here, I added the sound to kind of signal to the player that they were there before they got fired upon. So the player knows instantly that, you know, there's a problem where when they shout, "There he is," and then you can, well, in fact, you've got this whole area to yourself because they cannot push a certain area. So I just stopped these guys from running straight up to the player. They will run up to the player if you push them, but that's your choice as a player. If you're pushing them, it's your choice, but they will not push you if you're down there. Okay, we're now in the trip mine section, and I added this fence in so the player could see the exit, or at least what could be an exit, because either of these doors to the player may seem like the way out. So this could have easily have just been one single wall. The player could be focused on that, but instead I opened it up so the player can see, right, that's where we need to go. Because as you see, there's no trip mines there. Well, there is kind of there, but not over in this area. I placed these funny signs, well, not funny, just normal signs, as to kind of mock the player as they're going through the trip mine maze. And I always wanted to do a trip mine maze like this. If you hit one of these trip mines, it's game over. It's similar to, I think it's surface tension, where you're in the warehouse, and yeah, you've got like no job, you know, an accident today, no job tomorrow. And these guys just act as an extra distraction just in case, or just to kind of make you feel a bit more scared. So, I don't know why it still does that. It will fire a shot even if you clicked it long before you started reloading or something like that. Or I think it's when you push the, press the button while it's reloading, I'm not sure. That could be bad if I was aiming at one of those, because if you shoot one of those, it's game over as well. And yeah, there's grenades to find here. Now, this was the bit that was changed. Originally, you could get up onto that shelf. It was a fairly simple solution. You jumped on the pallets, and then these two pallets weren't here, so you could jump on the black kind of, I guess, crate, and then jump on there, jump over. That was fairly simple, and I put the battery on to show the player that they could stand on it. Now, because, I guess that's not obvious, and it's not obvious to most players. Most players will come and they'll be looking for, probably on this side, for a way over. They'll be trying to jump. I did make sure that the player couldn't easily get across here, so the simplest solution to fix it was just make it easy, because really I only did it as kind of an extra step. It wasn't part of the main design. All of this was part of the main design, from like the elevator round to here. It's like I carefully made sure where all of these trip mines were going. Now it's just, you need to get from there to there, and this was just thrown in, so I fixed it, if you know what I mean. I changed it so that a simple jump up there and then across here is required, but you're still doing the same thing, so I didn't lose anything in terms of what I wanted the player to do. And now we come down and we hear a firing sound, and we can see the head crabs go flying. Now, we'll come back to talk about that in a minute. First off, I'm going to get the crossbow. I have been slightly unfair with the crossbow. It's actually not always in that location. It actually spawns random locations. I did this for fun, basically. There was no reason why I couldn't just put it in one location, but if you come and play this mod again, you'll have to search somewhere else. So that's why a lot of people didn't find it, because often it's really difficult to find places. And this part leads back here, so in case you were to fall off, you could then come up here. Not everyone, I think, will open that door, so sometimes I'll have to go all the way around again, which is just, I can't do anything about that. Just realised there's something happening in that vent. I have no idea. I've never seen it before. It's a bit weird. Anyway, so we heard the turret, the sentry, I guess, and we saw these guys getting wrecked. They've suggested I added in the head crabs to show the player, to signal to the player that they're there before you actually reach it, because originally you would walk up the top and then it would spawn. And the reason I did that is because you're safe. On this ground level, you're completely safe, almost. And that's why I made it, is because you can, you've got freedom of this area. You can basically do whatever you want. I even put frag grenades in. So it'd be like that initially, But by putting in the head crabs, it kind of shows that it's there and you can deal with it. So we can deal with it, we can shoot it, or we can come along here and... There we go, aim a grenade. So we can actually take that out without even encountering it, which is something I really like. Not for all sentry guns or turrets or anything like that, but just in this scenario it's quite good. So now we're in this room again, this is the second time, and this time we are crossing over to the other side. Now, I don't think you can jump around this crate, at least I've tried, but not a lot. So someone's probably found a way to kind of do a skillful jump around it, but this just, you know, blocks off the path and you've kind of got to go and fix it. So that requires going in this room, so there's not very much to see in this room. These zombies, similar to the alien grunt back down the bottom, they were placed in to kind of feed the player's combats. Although there is a bit more now. Another thing is, I should have put a window in here out to see where the hostages were, although I think it would have been too intensive on, you know, frame rates and stuff like that, just to kind of remind the player of their end goal. I'm hoping that the player is, you know, still aware that they're there, you know, that's what they're going for. But in any case, this kind of shows that you can open it. Well, it still makes the noise. I should have fixed that. And then coming out of here, conveniently the door opens and these guys sometimes they charge, sometimes they don't, and it's good because this crate kind of gives you some cover from them. I kind of deliberately made sure that this door was here and that door was there, so you could kind of follow the crate if you wanted a bit more cover. So that was kind of my thinking there. These guys, sadly, they'll run round and sometimes push. Other times they don't. So I'm not sure. I could have done more to stop that, but I didn't. So yeah, so that's been this room for the second time. Now we actually come to the exit. This is the end. This is where we're going to finish up. Well, it's not, because we've still got a lot more to do. Well, not a lot more. We've got stuff to do. I've put the exit sign here so the player can clearly see the way out. They can't access it. They don't have high, you know, clearance, high enough clearance, which is where the captives in the cage will come in. So the main goal is to get out, but now rescuing these captives or hostages has become like it's really become the main goal now. And I tried to make this area a loop, so we'll be coming back here, and it works fairly well as a loop. Walking under here, you can hear the door creak, and then it conveniently closes behind you as a player. Stuff like that happens all the time. Stuff like that happens all the time in Half-Life and stuff like that. It just, you know, I know it's not very realistic, but it kind of stops the player from going back, and when the player goes back round to that area, it stops them coming back through here. So it solves many, many, many problems. Now, this room's probably my favourite, or it was my favourite one to design anyway, in terms of trip mines, and the satchels are rarely used in Black Mesa. They are, but not a lot. So I've decided to take inspiration from things like Opposing Force and Blue Shift, and I added in a blowtorch section where you got a long time to think about how you wanted to take on the enemy. So I'll go and trigger that and show you what I mean. So you've got to walk into this area, but then it starts. It's like, well, I've presented you with the trip mines, these satchels here. They're taking... I didn't want it to be too long, but at the same time I didn't want it to just be a quick one, and I actually wanted to give you time to prepare. So this box is placed here so you could put that there, and you can in fact climb up here. I'll talk more about that in a minute. And without really using a gun... Wait, did any of them survive? Sometimes they survive and that's not good. No, they didn't. So, without even firing a shot from our gun, we managed to take them out. They barely got a chance to even fire upon us as well. And that's one of these encounters. You expect to be using a gun. You expect to be just having a boring old fight. Not that fighting in this game is boring. It's just, it's good to change things up. So, I'd played... There's a chapter in Blue Shift, I think it's called Power Struggle, where that very thing happens. I played that, the day before I was making this area, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to just add it in. And it's similar in this, not the Citadel, it's the bank or the museum in Half-Life 2, where you get kind of locked in a room and then they try and, Barney's there. They do that kind of thing, so that's what I was going for, and I really liked that, especially with the amount of items. So I make it obvious where each item is. You do have to kind of think quickly, but it also gives you the option to just use a gun or use the trip mines. It's up to you. So, and also you noticed I placed these crates so you can go up here. Now, I didn't want to use any ladders. I think I am done with using ladders in Source games. I think ladders are glitchy and not very practical in the long run. And I've had far more problems with ladders than I have not. So I'm kind of finding new ways of getting places. So that's why these crates are like that, conveniently stacked. So now we come into the main final battle. This battle was created the day before release, or it got started making 2 days before release, and it was fully padded out the day before the Stalwart Extended Edition was released to the public. And the room was never this big. The room was much smaller. The room just acted as a place. You walked in here, you can look through this window and you can see the cage. Again, it's directly in front of you. Maybe it's not that clear through the fence and the window, but you can still see it. And you kind of have a good idea on what it's going to do. If I could, I would put the image there, put a screen there. I don't know if screens are still working, or still broken rather, because they were, well, they broke back in 2018, and yeah, I don't know. But that's what I would have done, but you can still get a general idea on what you're going to do. You're going to push the button and they're going to be free. But obviously, things are never that simple, so we had a few discussions about how it should end, and I tried one method where you were out there fighting along there, and I just wasn't really feeling it. It kind of felt very disjointed, so I decided to adopt the same approach from the battle at the end of the first map and just have a kind of wave spawning. In fact, I think this battle is probably less intensive in many regards. Maybe that's good, maybe that's not good, but in any case, we'll begin the battle and I'll try and talk over it. As you see, the window covering closes, and also this temporary gate that was added in very, very last minute to stop the player from running back into that room. And as I was saying earlier, this battle does not give you time to prepare, which I probably should have basically given you time. And there's not a lot of time, because I remembered making a battle for, I think it was Nostalgiaville Cosmonaut, and it wasn't like this. It wasn't like you kill someone and trigger the next wave. Each wave was predefined, and people really hated that, like, seriously. So I didn't want that to happen, so it's just, you kill, all of the enemies in a wave, and then the next wave starts. Now, if I can get my shots right, there we go. And then this gave me a chance to add in the blowtorch mechanics again. Although this one doesn't work as well because it was done very last minute. And I just wanted to finish. But you can spend that time planning ahead, or you can spend it stocking up on health. In any case, that only really took out one of them. And you can let the soldiers take out the vorts, or you can try and take out the vorts yourself. Either way, that's... You know, it's kind of a easy-going battle, but it's still a final battle. Because at the very, very, very start, and throughout the majority of development, there was no final battle. It was just push the button, go out, and then kind of... Well, I'll explain it in a minute. But the reason why this room was created was so that you could start up the power again. So you plug in the thing, the plug. You hear a bit of the music, because I think there's some fade out issue. I'm not entirely sure how good it is in Source. This room was designed on the last day, basically. Or the day before the last day. But I actually really like it. Just because it was different from the We've Got Hostile style. So was this one, was a lot different. It was kind of based off Apprehension or Blast Pit or Power Up or something. I can't remember. But that's kind of... It was kind of a combination of all of them. And now there should be a green sprite, yes. We can push the sprite. The window opens and we can see the doors opening there. And I put the music, the sad music in it. It's not really sad music, but it kind of is just kind of melancholy music, just to show that that's it. You know, it's over. Nothing else is going to happen. This gate doesn't open back up because, yeah, I just didn't want the player going back in there. Originally, 2 guards came from the right, had a look at what was going on there, turned around, and then the doors magically opened. But I removed them last minute because you'd already had the final fight, and it wouldn't make sense. So these guys... Sometimes they get stuck in there and it really annoys me. But yeah, you can see back into the original area. So it's just making use of space. And these guys will just run by themselves. So I initially had them following you, but it didn't work very well. So now they just go, it's just straight to the point, because at this point I want the thing to be over. Not in a bad way. Like the player's done what they need to do. They now need to finish the map. So if there was another map, there'd be something new introduced, but obviously there's not. This is it.
Lead the way. Yeah, let's go.
And obviously this is the last time we're in the room. And again, we've been up there, around there, in there, round here, back out. Just constantly looping, constantly making use of the same areas. But the better it's done, the more the player can appreciate these environments. So if I built this room and the player was only in it once, I probably wouldn't have put as much effort. I'm not saying it's the most detailed thing in the world. I'm just saying I would have not put as much effort into it if the player was only in it once. But the fact that I knew that the player was going to be in it multiple times, that's the way it was designed, I could, do a bit more with the ceiling and all that. And that is it. That's Stalwart Extended Edition by JamaicanDave and myself. Again, it was made in about a month, and it was really fun. I mean, it was great to work with Dave. It was great to be able to map again, because I'd been in a mapping slump where I'd start a project, and it just wouldn't be going anywhere, or it would be, and then I'd just lose motivation. So it's great to have made something again. I hope I don't fall into another mapping slump after this, but it's been fun. So, thank you for watching.